Thank you, Katie. We will move on to communications petitions. Item letter A, Fall 2023 Electronics Recycling Event. That is Thursday, September 28th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And that's at the 149 Waterworks Ave, which is right next to the DPS building. And a list online, and this went in the BPU bill too, right?
Yes.
The paper copies, yeah. It's got a list of the accepted items and non-accepted items. So if you've got electronics to recycle, it's a good thing to take advantage of. Any discussion? Okay, we'll move on. Item letter B, Library Director letter of resignation. I'm not going to read the letter, but you can see in the packet, and it's already been shared online. Jessica Spangler, our Library Director, resigned her position. We wish her all the luck in the world. Any discussion on this item? Okay, we'll move on. Item letter C, Special Assessment District 2024-08, Karla Adams. Karla?
Good evening, Council. Thanks for having me forward today. So at the last Special Assessment District hearing for 24-08, I didn't hear a roll call vote or any other letters of opposition. So at that time of the hearing, I didn't know there were no discussions amongst council. I wasn't quite sure how that hearing worked, but after the meeting, I was told that there was no letters included in a packet and that nobody else had seen letters, and that was in my conversation group. So I started doing some research and I FOIA'd the FOIA director, and I asked, during public hearing 2024-08 West St. Joe that was held on August 21st, 2023, not included in the packet nor publicly discussed or voted on, were numerous letters of oppositions. Why were those disregarded from council? Why weren't the letters included in the hearing? And then it says, like an appeal to the vote that was held for the public hearing, reason for stated above, and then how do you feel about that? Could we hold another public hearing for lack of public information? And did council follow correct statute protocol for the City Charter and Public Improvements Act 188, which I don't think that you guys even follow 188. But basically I was told I don't have to answer this, it's in question format. So I asked Katie why it wasn't included, and she informed me that there wasn't enough time to put it in the packet, and that some of them were turned in on Thursday before the Monday hearing. But it's a hearing, so I assumed it would be public record in the packet or not. I don't understand why it wasn't included. So I started doing some more research, and I came across this public hearings. This is from the Municipal Research and Services Center. Now, it says that there are two types of public hearings: a legislative public hearing. The purpose of that hearing is to obtain public input on important legislative policy matters that affect a wide range of citizens, comprehensive land use plans, annual budget. Since legislation acts do not trigger constitutional due process rights, legislative public hearings are generally subject to fewer procedural requirements than quasi-judicial public hearings. So I looked at that. They generally affect a large segment of the public and involve the legal rights of specific identifiable parties, such as consideration of land use variance permits and site-specific rezones. Quasi-judicial hearings require due process for the parties involved, so such hearings tend to be stricter. My main question is, David Mackey in 2018 formed with council and the mayor an incentive program to put together a road project where he would get 2 to 4% salary increase for pavement of roads at a half-mile increment, up to 4% of his salary per year. My SAD came in 2023, but there was already set in motion from 2018 to 21, numerous special assessment districts. Now, in a quasi-judicial hearing, The people who form the hearing are not allowed to be biased. So I would consider the fact that David is getting kickbacks from incentives and formed the hearing with council's approval, that would be a biased hearing. That's number one. Number two, in the SA district that I'm on, the SAD, there are 4 city properties. Who pays those? The assessments for those? Residents, right? Taxpayers. So then we're paying for the special assessments on 4 properties, our property, the millage, and David's past salary, because that was coming out of the general fund from what I could see. I also FOIA'd David to see if he was receiving any cutbacks or employees were receiving cutbacks. And I was sent to October 28th, I believe, in which the new contract with BPU is now in effect. But looking at the record, he was making about $98,000 a year, and I believe he's making $163,000 now. So you look at 21, he was the 10th highest paid employee in the state of Michigan for a city employee. We have residents here that have a 24.6% poverty rate. The average citizen makes $39,000 a year before taxes with one job. So you want us to pay for 4 special assessments on your property, which is also our property, so the whole city should be included in the vote now. Then you want me to pay for my special assessment, the 3.5 mils, and then not even get to hear the oppositional letters or names included for people who didn't want it. So it says in the Open Meetings Act 267 of 1976, number 5, a person must be permitted to address a meeting of public body under rules established and reported by the public body. Now your rules were, if there were oppositions, to write in, yet none of them were included but mine. And after the meeting, the mayor and another council member didn't even know that there were letters, other than mine. That's pretty disheartening. So I continued. I have in my possession 50% of the residents on West St. Joe that cannot afford or do not want the assessment. In Burlington, there was a special assessment done on our drive and S Drive South. Our drive did not, I don't know which one it is, our drive or South Drive, one of them did not want to be included, so they dropped that portion of the road and continued with the other road. So I'm here today to ask, in my 50% letters, that you honor our appeal and that you start taking off the properties owned by the city as an oppositional vote. They should be excluded at minimum from the vote. So if you don't write an oppositional letter and it's automatic yes, I don't think that we should have to do that. I want to get back to this raise too. The first raise started February 26, 2018. Committee began to address items listed in a proposal previously submitted by the city manager. Term of the contract, compensation, cost of living adjustment, bonus, health insurance, travel expenses, DP plan, 457 plan, and severance terms. Copy of Mr. Mackey's proposal is attached. It gets pretty interesting. So we're looking at $96,000 and $96,900 to start. At the base of 110 was determined as an analysis of municipalities in the southern Michigan region with population close to that of Hillsdale. On fixing the COLA at a 3% annual increase, Mr. Mackey indicated that this would take the matter out of the realm of yearly political controversy. So he's asking for a raise here. He's asking for $400 per month, $4,800 annual for his automobile mileage.
Karla,
Yeah.
I don't see what Dave's contract has to do with the special assessment.
Okay.
And to be clear, I
Yes.
agree with you about the special assessment, and I think that we should, at the very least, have another hearing, because, I think you're a machine. You've uncovered a lot of stuff and done a lot of research, but I don't understand. I can explain to you Dave's contract, because I've been here the entire time that Dave Mackey's been here, and we're actually paying Dave less out of the general fund now than we were 4 years ago.
Which, that is odd to me. My fact is this. In a township special assessment or a village special assessment, it's usually the residents that petition for the hearing. In this case, the hearing was set forth by council with the authority of David Mackey, under the assumption that he would be getting a 2 to 4% salary increase starting in 2018. Now his contract merged with BPU in 21, but if you look at these special assessment districts, you can see that these were formed before then, and I feel like that's a biased hearing. That's number one. And number two, there really isn't enough time. The way it's written in the thing, it's like at bare minimum. Look, I spent 4 weeks collecting information. 2 weeks before I came in here, and I'm not an attorney, so I had to go through the acts and try to understand them verbatim by myself. And a normal person gets the letter from BPU alone and cannot understand what it says. That's just from out here. So that tells you the difference between in here and out there. But one of the things that's very disturbing to me that I found is that these special assessment districts are supposed to be time constrained, meaning this one goes for 10 years, but guess what? 10 years ago, there was also a special assessment in my district for sidewalks, and guess what? 10 years later, the sidewalks are now out of order. So who pays that? The residents. So it's almost like a perpetual lien. You pay it off, you get back into it. And I feel like this needs to stop. I've come in with the pavement guy, that wasn't good enough, it doesn't work. Look, if I can put this much effort into it, I'm sure there are other sources or other ways that we can make this work for all people that live here. Because if you're a senior citizen and you're on disability or you're on Social Security and you put your time in, they don't have time to do this. They don't deserve the money that keeps on pouring out of their pocket. And you guys can fix this. So like I said, I have 50% of the people on West St. Joe that do not want this. With your properties, I wish that you would take them off for a vote, but whatever. I still have enough. So if you want to have another hearing, I would appreciate that. If the next time that you want to do special assessment districts, you can spend a little bit more time, which I know you do. A lot of people don't go to these hearings, these meetings, and this goes on. But there are a lot of rules and different things from different areas that could be included in how this is handled. Does that make sense?
It does. And like I said, I agree with the bulk of what you're saying. I don't want to get into these waters about, we took the bonus out of Dave's contract because council decided to go in the direction of special assessments. I would also like to mention that every person that's sitting up here is a city resident. We all pay into all this stuff too. And none of us get paid jack to do this up here. These guys are all making $100 a month, so.
Hey, I know, you guys work hard. You're in
No,
there all
I'm
the time.
not, what I'm saying is we're not trying to screw the residents because we are the residents as well. I agree with you about special assessments. I don't like them. I vote against them. I think they're unfair. I think that when you have somebody that can't pay them, I think it's predatory and I don't like them, but it's the direction council's decided to go in against, I'm one vote on council and I respect the rest of council and that's the direction they want to go in, and there's wiser people than me sitting up here. But I don't want to wade out into the water about Dave's contract, but the 160 is split between Board of Public Utilities and the city of Hillsdale because he's doing 2 jobs. And it was actually a cost-saving measure, and I will say I was in favor of that too. We got rid of basically a $100,000 employee, and then essentially I think 50% is coming out of the general fund of his pay. The other 50% is coming out of Board of Public Utilities. Now, as far as having a new hearing, I think we should have a new hearing because the letters weren't in the packet, and I think that should void the last hearing. But I'm willing to operate on the will of council, what legal counsel says, and what the rest of the council decides. But I would make a motion to void the last hearing and hold another hearing on it. But Tom's going to have to be. Tom, is that something we can do?
There would have to be a motion to rescind the adoption of it to start with.
Okay.
Tom, the council rules of procedure state that if we're going to reconsider something, it has to be done at the same meeting and by a person who was on the winning side.
That's correct. Dave was correct about that. Those are
That-
council rules.
And that's the second part of it, is it has to be by way of a motion to reconsider it, by way of, in effect, rescinding that adoption of that special assessment district. Because remember, a special assessment district isn't like your run-of-the-mill type of ordinance or motion that you might approve. Right. It's got its own set of procedures that are in the charter and in ordinance, which kind of mirror each other. And the only thing that the issue of the letters has to do with isn't to inform the council. It's a procedural mechanism within both the charter and the ordinance that if, at or before the time of the public hearing, and the adoption of the special assessment district by the council, more than 50% of the private property owners of private property in the proposed special assessment district.
So it only is for private property, so we're not counting the city
So you
lots.
don't count
Okay.
whatever the city owns in making that determination, but it has to be more than 50%, and that doesn't mean that it gets knocked down.
I know.
It means it requires a supermajority of votes,
Yeah.
7 votes, in order to approve it, as opposed to just a standard majority of the council. So that's the only thing that those letters have to do with. From a practical standpoint, it doesn't matter whether or not they're in the packet.
From a policy standpoint, but we are representatives of the people, and I feel like council is highly influenced by feedback from the residents. So when we don't, and I'm not trying, Katie is an awesome clerk. The packets, the letters didn't get in the packet, things happen. It's not, I'm not trying to point the finger at anybody, but I feel like council, it gets feedback from the residents, and that's what helps us make the decisions that we make up here. So I'm talking from a practical standpoint. You're talking from a policy standpoint. Dave, did you have something to add?
Yes, so let's go through this. So Wednesday at noon is our deadline for the council packet. We had no letters in opposition as of Wednesday noon. Karla brought her letter in on Thursday at the end of the day. We added it against policy because we had no other letters, so we put her letter in the council packet even though it was beyond the deadline. We had no other letters. They did not get put in there. The next letters we received were on Friday at the end of the day. So the agenda was already out. Those letters were not put in the packet. We had them here on Monday. Katie had a copy. I had copies here. We were still well under the 50%. Karla came in and brought some letters that she hand delivered that still did not breach the 50% rule, and Katie took them and put them as part of the record. So that's how all the timing of all this went down. It wasn't that we were leaving them out or hiding them from anyone. They were here, but we did not get them to put them in the agenda packet.
Can I say something? I delivered mine August 13th. I'm not sure what day Wednesday you're talking about. The rest of them were August 18th and then one at the city council meeting. But how is a person out here to know that 50% threshold wasn't met? And after the fact, who votes on, who reads how many there is? Because the mayor had no idea that there were other letters included after that hearing. And then, he didn't know who counted these then to decide that council should vote, and why were there no public recorded testimonies of that?
There was no one up at the council that asked that question.
Right.
So we had them here. We had 2 people speak, yourself and another resident. You guys were the only 2 here. And so council spoke to both of you and heard your testimony.
But the opposition had to be in writing. And then.
That's the policy.
Yeah.
It's a
And we
crappy
have
policy.
So being
But
here
they were
really
here.
didn't matter. My question is, how was this recorded to make your guys' vote? How did you discover there was not enough letters if Adam didn't receive one and he's part of council before council voted? Because public sure didn't see that.
Tom?
You refer to it as policy, it's actually law. It's an ordinance and a charter provision.
Okay.
And its only purpose, the 50% threshold, whether or not you need 7 votes or 5 votes in order to pass it, and that's it. You have a public hearing for the purpose of allowing people to come forward and discuss their concerns directly with the council. If they want to submit it, as long as they're available to council to look at the time, particularly if they're received the day of or the day before you would have your meeting, those are available at that time. It would generally be the clerk's function to determine prior to the vote that you would have as to whether or not the threshold of more than 50% of the owners of the private property within the proposed district have given something in writing with respect to their opposition. I want to make sure that we understand that the doing it in writing part only applies for purposes of that 50% threshold. It doesn't have anything to do with that you're required if you want to oppose the adoption of the district itself, that it has to be in writing. Come here, you can.
That's what public comments for.
But that's what the public hearing itself is for, is to provide that opportunity for any members of the public, including the members of the Special Assessment District, who presumably would be the ones who most likely would show up because they have the most interest in it, to come in and say why they don't want you to do it or why they do want you to do it, and voice their concerns in that respect. So I just want to make sure that we're making that distinction between the two things and we're not kind of muddling it.
Okay. All right. Is anybody that was on the winning side willing to hold another public hearing? Then I don't think there's anything more that can then. Yeah, I mean, sure. Go ahead.
I've been on the council for 16 years on and off. The biggest thing I always heard was fix these streets. We looked every which way direction we could possibly do to fix these streets. We've had special assessments going on for what, 5-6 years now, I believe. My street project up my area, Westwood Drive, is a deplorable street. It's gonna cost almost, I think, $6 million, the project. Those people wanted it fixed. I drove down your street the other day, I went out to the beach. I made a mistake going down West St. Joe. That is deplorable, that street.
Who's been running the city, not me? I'm just telling you.
I'm not here to debate you, ma'am.
No, you wouldn't win. No offense, none of this.
Well, that's fine. We voted, this is the way we found to fix the streets. It's not state money coming in. Once in a while we get grant money, but we have to follow the rules of the state grant money when we get it. You don't get it that often. When we do, we're lucky. But you want to continue to have your streets the way it is, you want to continue bringing your cars to repair shops, it's going to cost you $2,000 to $3,000 when you keep driving on those streets. Trust me, I know. I see them all the time where I work. This is a cheaper way to do it because in 10 years' time, you pay that back, you're going to have at least 2 car repairs done, possibly on that, driving on those streets.
Explain then the revolving SATs.
I don't want to get into back and forth between the podium and council. If any council member is willing, can have something to say if they'd like council discussion. But if we're not going to vote on another public hearing, I just assume move on. After anybody
I
gets.
just want to clarify one thing. There was a roll call vote taken. We voted on it one by one. It's not true that there was no roll call vote taken.
The roll call vote for the oppositions,
The roll
before
call-
council voted.
All right. Anybody else? Councilman Deere.
I think the council, by going back and rescinding this, would set a really bad precedent. Now, I can appreciate all the hard work that Karla's done, but it's, basically, we had a public hearing. I know from working on committees, in order to get it in the council packet, you have to have it to Katie by Wednesday. And it's, at some point, I mean, she's got to put a lot of stuff together to make these meetings happen. Also, this whole council, we don't do this full time. This is part-time. We need time to look at the packet and the agenda and what's in it, to go over it on the weekends when we aren't working in order to prepare for the
Monday night meeting. So I just think it would be a real bad precedent for a redo, because then, bottom line, I mean, you know, things have consequences. Elections have consequences. And so from that standpoint, you know, we're doing it for the betterment of Hillsdale. And the fact that the assessed values that these properties are being over the 10-year period is a fractional of the cost of redoing the roads back to a state of functionality.
Thank you, Tony. Any more conversation in council? Thank you, Karla.